Welcome to Trends with Benefits, a podcast by Van Eck with a forward-looking perspective. We explore new ways of thinking about the markets, investing, work, and life. Here's your host, Ed Lopez.
Welcome to another episode of Trends with Benefits. I'm here with my special guest, Ryan Shanks, co-founder and CEO of Famatch. Ryan has considered himself the sports agent to financial advisors. He has over 20 years experience in financial services. And prior to Famatch, he served in leadership roles for two independent broker-dealers, where he managed national recruiting and internal succession strategies. And since 2000, he has managed and helped negotiate the transition of more than $200 million in commission and advisory revenue. And above everything else, Ryan is a proud husband and father of two boys and a girl. Ryan, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ed. It's great to be here.
So Famatch is a recruitment firm that connects advisors and firms. That's a very basic description of it. What is, let's put it in your words, how do you describe Famatch?
Yeah, I think that ideally we describe ourselves as sort of the intersection between financial advisors and wealth management firms, right? One side of the fence is oftentimes not happy with what they have access to serve the clients. And on the other side, it's a firm that thinks that they provide significant value to an advisor. So what we're doing is we're just standardizing that process between the two sides. We have a privacy wall we've created inside of our workflow, and we're automating it.
When did you start and launch Famatch?
You know, it's interesting. I started having conversations with my co-founder, Eric, and that was probably in 2017, 2016 even. We started development of the code. First line was written in January of 18. And then we officially rolled it out to the marketplace in February of last year.
So you've been in financial services for 20 years. Maybe we can kind of step back and you can walk me through your background a little bit. Did you start out in recruitment in financial services, or did you start out in another industry?
Yeah, so I started out, I was recruiting in technology. Pretty broad geography, US, Asia Pacific, and the UK. And when 9/11 took place, technology recruiting pretty much ceased to exist. Rightfully so, right? These companies all of a sudden really started to pull back, tighten the reins, and one outlay of capital that they didn't really want to, continue with was paying outside headhunters, recruiters, to hire appropriate people inside the companies. So that's how I really cut my teeth, just pure recruiting. And then from there, I was like, okay, well, I can't recruit in technology. I'm actually really enjoying this. If you can come about it the right way, I'd like to explore other verticals. And I just stumbled across financial advisor recruiting and fell in love with it.
How have you seen the industry evolve over time, over the 20 years that you've been in it?
Significantly. You go back 20 years ago and, sort of the thought or even bringing up an independent broker dealer, the marketplace did not know what that was. Outside of just really, really small, tight circles, it was still dominated by wirehouses, regional brokerage, banks were really starting to scale at that time and becoming pretty competitive. But the independent financial advisor wasn't really kind of in vogue, if you will. And it's obviously now you look at where we sit today, 2020, and it's completely flipped to where the independent side of the industry has got, I believe, more efficient technology. I believe that there are no conflicts in how they provide advice. So, I've seen a significant amount of change in the 20 years. And the crazy thing is, I think over the next 5 years, we'll see more change than in the last 20.
What led you to launch Famatch? What was it that you saw in the industry or the need that you guys were trying to solve for?
I think in large part, it was that, there's a saturation of third-party traditional recruiters in the wealth management financial advisor space, and their processes are all different. And the firms are out there wanting to get in front of those opportunities, and there's no standardized interface. Right? One recruiter might provide significant value and actually know the customer, know the advisor. Another may not know much about them, but just flips a name and a number over. Really, I think the overarching driver, though, was that I felt advisors weren't really in the driver's seat. Advisors, in my opinion, were riding shotgun, and who was driving them down the path of wherever they would land next was either a third-party recruiter that was really focused on where they were going to generate the biggest finder's fee, or a corporate recruiter. And if you think about it, a corporate recruiter is doing what they're hired to do. Go out and tell our story, tell our message, convince people that we're better than everywhere else, and get them to come to our company. And really none of those elements lift up the advisor and allow for them to be in the driver's seat. And so we wanted to do something about that.
And so the platform that you guys developed, you talk about it being data driven and a technology platform. Can you describe it a little bit more on how it works?
Yeah, so there's two user types. There's a financial advisor and there's a financial services company, and each goes through a very similar registration process. There are nuances based upon the registration type. So we take into account as they register what those questions are that are specific. So, for example, if you're inside of a bank, there are different questions we're going to ask in your registration than if you're in a wirehouse or an independent broker dealer. And we created a workflow that captures data. And what we did is we pulled back and we said, what data indexes decisions in this industry? And we want to be able to capture that data, build out an algorithm that marries that data up together so that each user only sees in the matching queue who they're capable of doing business with. And then we give both users the ability to reach out and suggest a connection. And then we require that the other side confirm that connection, meaning that, if I'm interested in connecting with you, I chase you around, but you're not interested in me, you can reject that connection request. When it's all said and done, it allows for the right people to be speaking earlier in the process. So long game, we're really hopeful that we can reduce the amount of time it takes to go on the courtship stage to marriage, where you actually make a move to a company. We would like to see that timeline reduced.
And how does the revenue model work for your business? Is it a subscription? Does an advisor join? Do they pay, or is there a finder's fee on the firm side? How does that work in your case?
So it's free for advisors forever. I've always believed that the advisor is the greatest value in the equation of wealth management. They have the client relationships. Firms, with all due respect to all of them, there's great ones in the industry, they're commodities, right? That advisor with the stickiness of those relationships is what matters most. So no cost to the advisor. The firms pay as a monthly membership fee, and they pay a flat fee of $10,000 for any advisor that they recruit.
Has COVID impacted the business, or have you seen a boost in the business because of COVID?
We've been really steady. We've seen an uptick in terms of an awareness. I think some of it's because it's forced the rest of the industry to focus really more fully digital. You think about us, right? That's what we hatched out of, right? Famatch is fully digital. We certainly have a coaching kind of consulting component to the business, but we're not a sandwich shop, right? So COVID didn't impact our business in that way. And so it's starting to drive an awareness that, we're online, we're able to create that connectivity. We're much lower cost basis. We're far more transparent, and with a standardized experience that's repeatable. We think that there's real value in the industry for that.
Now, a lot has been said or written and perhaps known about the industry, that the industry is aging. I guess the average age of a financial advisor is anywhere from 51 to 55. I think maybe a little over a third is expected to retire within the next 10 years. Do you see that influencing your business or use of the technology?
I do see it influencing our business, but I'll tell you that what's variable about what you just shared is that that percentage of advisors plan to retire in the next 10 years. Because I know, from a data perspective, it can sort of read that way, but in practicality, when the advisors and you see the actions that they take, they're not retiring, right? They're staying the course, and they're just sort of kicking the can down the road, and perhaps they'll address it the following year. So we believe that I'm a fundamentalist, that you crawl before you walk, and then when you sort of get pretty good at walking, you learn to run. Still consider ourselves a very early stage startup that are crawling, but we believe that the algorithm and the approach that we put on the field about driving compatibility, where the focus is the fit over the fee, we think that there's real value as we evolve, where that could potentially be something that could drive value around continuity, right? So an advisor looking to sell with an advisor where there's compatibility, a firm looking to sell to a firm where there's compatibility. So you really get out of a lot of the BS that goes on in the space around, I want to go out and I want to go to the highest bidder. Okay, I certainly can appreciate you wanting to get sort of, above average rack rate for the business that you have, but I think that it's all relative. I think that if the market isn't willing to bear a price above a certain threshold, that somehow standardizes the process. So again, we're just a connector. Right? We're trying to connect folks together based upon compatibility and letting them then engage to say whether they like each other.
So that's interesting. So outside of just, when I think of recruiting, I think of employee and firm, but you might be able to help somebody transition out of the business if they wanted to sell their business and help them match up with a firm that could take over that business.
Yeah, it's not something that we do today. And again, we're still crawling. I mean, I would think of that as being something down the road that's maybe in the sprint arena. We think we're certainly in the wheelhouse to be able to engage with that. But right now, we're really trying to provide the standardized way that advisors make transitions and evaluate firms for that change. We want to get that right before we move to anything else.
Now, do you think there's a risk of shortage of new financial advisors coming into the industry?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
I think that training programs aren't what they used to be. You know, going back 20 years ago when I started, it's almost 21 years ago when I started in the business, there were a lot of training programs that were really aggressive. They were bringing a huge cohort into the class. They wouldn't all last, right? But it was bringing a big volume inside. And then you would see who would actually, get the licenses, who would stay the course, who had enough friends and family to create a minimum asset threshold to stick around, and could they make a living out of it. I think what you're seeing now is those training programs no longer exist. The independent wealth management landscape is trying to step in and provide some guidance there, but it requires a lot of infrastructure and costs. And I haven't really seen anyone really get it right. So yes, I think we have a real issue. I think that as I talk to professors at college, as I talk to students in college that are studying finance, every chance I get, I'm trying to communicate that this is a worthwhile field to get into. And I think that where if we can do a better job, more macro level as a whole industry, communicating that, this next generation coming out of college, they're not as concerned about the income as they are the impact. And I think that you think about this profession, it has an impact on people's lives that I think that you would put right up there with someone as a doctor, right? Someone who's perhaps a priest or someone, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the impact you're having on people's lives. And I think that if we can create an attractiveness for a younger generation and be thoughtful enough to be able to plant the seed earlier, I think that we'll see this turn around over the next 10 to 15 years. The issue you have is everyone's focused on the here and the now, right? I see it in recruiting. Firms are looking to recruit advisors that are successful now, that are most successful. Well, that's the advisor that everyone's trying to recruit.
The types of advisors that have worked with you to date, have they been on the younger side or the older side? Have you seen any generational differences in who you're working with and what firms are looking for?
All of the above. So we don't really discriminate. So, literally advisors 24 years old, advisors 78 years old, two completely different sides of the industry life cycle, if you will, as an advisor, looking for two completely different things, right? The advisor that's 23, 24 determines that they want to do planning, but they're aligned with a firm that just doesn't, that's not their belief philosophically. And so they're then sitting there going, okay, I'm at a crossroads. Is there what I'm looking for out there based on the fact that I'm so new in the business and I don't have portability, which gives me leverage in this industry, right? If I make a move and I have no clients that come with me, the majority of firms take themselves out of that equation because they don't want to engage to hire someone that new. So it's a function of trying to coach them on how they position themselves to add value to maybe a mid or a late tier advisor life cycle, where they're maybe more savvy with technology, social media, marketing. They can interact directly as a peer group with the firm's current clients' kids. And so there's elements where you can sort of insert yourself to drive value. The advisor that's at 78, 80 years old, I feel that they realize that they missed the window. They just decided to stay in the business, and now their clients are almost similar in age to them, right? They're mostly on fixed income. It's not a growing asset. So if you think about turning to sell it, you're not going to generate any sort of increase, right? It's going to be a discount. And then what you've got to be really cautious of in that scenario is a younger advisor coming in to buy an aging client base for all the wrong reasons.
On the firm side, and the firm's looking for advisors, what are some of the things that firms are doing today to attract talent?
Well, I mean, Zoom is, this social, this sort of virtual world that we're in is really, it's kind of cool because it's leveling the playing field. The big firms with the big budgets that are typically going to all the conferences and they've got the biggest booths, it's all flattened, right? So it's, can you articulate a unique value prop through online media? And can you get some exposure there? And then can you back it up with a delivery? So, we've seen quite a bit of movement and a lot of activity going on during COVID. So advisors are certainly still aware that I'm not happy where I'm at and there is change. What they have is time on their side because they're, no longer going into an office or at home. And so they're able to really engage and have those conversations to see what else might be out there.
So you're saying that they have to have a social media presence or an online presence and some kind of following that might help them get some more awareness and firms might be attracted to that?
Well, I think it depends, right? As an advisor, you have certain limitations depending upon the advisor registration type. So the company that if you're an employee, your firm may not allow you to use certain social media. And if they do let you use them, they may dictate all of the rules around it. So you can't really communicate a unique voice. You're just someone echoing the company's macro voice, right? So there's no real distinction. But on the firm side, that's where the really small boutique firms can go out there and get creative to try to get in front of that advisor, where they can meet them there through that medium.
What about, one of the big topics of this year in particular, and actually the last couple of years, is diversity. What's the awareness about the importance of diversity with firms that are looking? Are they doing enough to address it in the right way?
Short answer is no, they're not. I think as an industry, we have failed. I think that there's a lot of talking about it. There's a lot of perhaps good intentions by a few folks inside of every organization. But at the end of the day, you're not really seeing any significance. It's being sort of pushed that way. Now, having said that, I just read today that, JP Morgan is committing $30 billion over the next 5 years around diversity. So when you see something like that, you're like, okay, well, you could certainly afford it. And with all due respect to the rest of the industry, the peer group should follow. So I think I had the good fortune of hosting a conversation kind of earlier COVID with a number of folks, 2 Black men and a Black woman in our industry, and just sort of gave them the stage to talk about what's life like in financial services for you. And it was very telling. And it was something that I'll never understand because I'm not them. It was something I think that the rest of the audience, certainly it woke them up. And I think we're starting to see something really shift there. I'm hopeful that it actually shifts and there's a constant. And it's not just it's sort of in vogue. So everybody talk about how they've got a diversity and inclusion plan. I don't care about that. I want to see execution of that. I would rather see someone that's maybe not so loud about putting the plan in place, but underneath, they're actually putting it in place and they're actually creating the results. Because I think 3 to 5 years later, I'd like to see where those folks stand. So I think that there's a united front, I feel, for most folks in our industry to want to try to go out and do that. But I also was very surprised by some folks that just didn't want to engage in the conversation and listen. And I think that was somewhat telling.
Yeah, I know everybody has their own biases, and I think maybe a lot of people can agree it would be good to be more inclusive and have a more diverse workforce or firm. Are there steps that people can do to actually put that into action, whether they're a representative of a firm or an advisor themselves? Is there a way to actually start to help overcome your own biases, if you will?
Well, we're getting into some deep things here. I don't know. We're gonna shift this to sort of therapy and I think look, so much of what's going on is rooted in generations that precede us, family systems and behaviors, and it carries forward. And I think that there are folks that are willing to sort of stop and look around. I think for folks who want to try to do something about it, I think it's to go to someone that this is impacting in a negative way and say, we want you to lead this charge. We want your voice to be the one to craft and create this. Because me as a white male, do I really have any business creating something around diversity when I've not experienced the issues with it? So I think that it's creating maybe an advisory board or a council or just team members that spearhead it, where it comes from a place of authenticity, but more importantly, it comes from a place of experience. And I think that, some of it comes back to there's not a lot of diversity in the wealth management industry. And so I think it's a function of, can we go out and can we create more of that, right? So I go all the way back to the colleges. Can you create that awareness? Can you create the awareness to where it is open, right? We don't care about your race, your sex, your religion. We care that if you want to do right by people and change their lives, there is a path in wealth management where you can find your place. I think that's the bigger message.
And you mentioned training earlier. I mean, I started my career at American Express Financial Advisors, and we got a lot of training, and I thought that was really great financial planning concepts and what have you. For a younger advisor now, do they go to wirehouses and then leave, or are there other resources for advisors to get the training they need to kind of start out with an RIA?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, I think that was one of the most superb training programs in the industry when it existed. I mean, I'm good friends with a lot of advisors that started right where you did, and they're phenomenal. I think in terms of folks coming in new now, you could go into a wire, you could go into an insurance brokerage, and some of them may have some training programs that are lighter than they used to be, but there's something that still exists. But at the end of the day, most of them are saying, hey, we're going to give you some books you're going to study. We're going to give you some scripting. We're going to put you on this fast track. And we're going to see how many of your friends and family you can attract to come give you money. Now, think about that for a second, right? I'm starting out from scratch. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm going to go out and convince all of my really good friends and family that I care about to give me their money they worked their butts off for. And just trust me, I'm still figuring this out, but listen, I think we'll be okay. That risk is way too significant, you know? So I think the independent firms, some of the institutional custody platforms have tried to go out and they're trying to communicate at the college level to bring folks in, but it's not really a regimented training program. It's more of a matching program of, oh, so-and-so is coming out of this college. Could we help them get hired at this RIA? Well, that's great from an optics perspective, but does the firm have the capacity to actually spend the time with the advisor to help them learn the business? And more importantly, to figure out what seat in the bus they want to be in to kind of get some satisfaction out of this business, meaning they're making a difference and they're doing what they really want to be doing.
Is that a challenge for wealth management firms, or what are some of the other major challenges that firms are facing when they're trying to grow their business?
That's some of it. Some of it is it's the hiring. It's bringing in maybe younger folks that you could get at a lower cost basis, but it's going to require a heavier lift of time. Some of it is, frankly speaking, where I see a significant issue with firms that struggle to be able to bust through that plateau. It's ego. Every decision in this organization needs to run through me. Okay, that's a problem. You are not going to scale an organization. And clearly from a cultural perspective, you've not empowered people around you to make decisions that benefit the business. I think that there's a number of things. I'm constantly telling advisors that are growing to a pretty significant level, call it 500 million in assets, that they're getting to the point where they're going to need to step out of the advice part of the business, refer that to other advisors to be the advisor of their clients, and they need to step into a CEO role. And they need to professionally operate and run that company and start thinking more strategically. And listen, I suck at it. I mean, I've managed people. I suck at it. I would rather hire someone that knows so much more than me in that lane and say, go, and trust their decision-making, right? I think that that's just, again, that's me personally. There's other folks that are incredible at managing people, but I think that those are some things that you just have to recognize.
Yeah. It takes time. I've stumbled through that myself. And sometimes I think I feel fortunate enough to be thrown into situations where I was just too busy to do everything myself, and you had to rely on other people, and then you found your comfort level, you found your balance. So you're going to be starting something new called Office Hours. You're going to be doing this Thursdays at 4. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I kudos to you for doing some poking around, by the way. It is something that we'll be launching. It'll be the first Thursday of every month. The first one will go out in November, and it's Office Hours with me. And I'm inviting financial advisors from across the industry that find themselves in a precarious situation. They're not happy. They're curious about maybe how do I increase the value of my business? Because the truth is this, the recruiting industry is treated like a transaction, but it really is a journey. It really is. It starts with a question. And what I'm trying to do is make myself available that if there is that question, I want to meet the advisor where they are to give them an honest answer. And we'll be doing it here on Zoom. And based on the advisor's comfort level, we're letting them, they can show their face, they can call in, we can hear their voice, or they can message me the question.
And they can find that on famatch.com.
That's right. famatch.com. They scroll all the way down to the bottom. They'll see Office Hours. They can click that and they can register. And we're going to be very, very diligent about screening that so that they understand the privacy is important for that conversation to happen.
So do you have a take on the TD Ameritrade and Schwab tie-up? We recently did a Twitter poll. I don't know if the polling's over yet, but do you have a take on that?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. I was going to just pull that up right now. So it's I don't know whether you want me to share with you sort of where the current the data points point to.
Sure.
It's we have 221 votes as of right now, and the options were better technology, pricing leverage, increased competition, or less support. And 64% of respondents are saying less support is what they think the outcome of that merger acquisition is. 19% said better technology, and then it was pricing leverage. The fewest were on increased competition. So, I think TD Ameritrade did something phenomenal in this business around custody. They went out and they treated an advisor who had 50 million in assets like they had $500 million, and they serviced them accordingly. And that was a void that the marketplace had, right? It had kind of been that you had to be really, really big to get that attention. And they really came in and said, no, we're going to provide that to you. Again, we have technology, we can scale that ability. Their referral mechanism inside of TD Ameritrade was, I believe, top in the industry in terms of their branches referring to the advisors inside those RIAs. I'm not a fan. I don't have much of a voice, right? I'm just someone that's interacting and trying to drive sort of really good compatibility around advisor moves. I'm not really sure what it's going to look like. I mean, I know that when Schwab did the announcement, which I thought was too early, I think that perhaps tipped their hat at where things were going to go. And I know for a fact it scared a lot of the folks that were, with TD that were sort of sub 100 million in terms of, gosh, I've got this great relationship manager that I'm really good friends with now that's totally got my back and helps me navigate. And now that's gone. And I think what it does is it points to no matter how great technology is and how advanced we get, we are in a people connection business. And when you take that people connection away that was already established, and you say, well, you're going to establish a new one by calling a phone, it's not the same. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I think the whole industry is sort of sitting back and waiting. And, we're going to continue to monitor the results of this poll. And I'm going to continue to just engage with the industry to ask, how do they feel?
What is one long-term trend you see playing out over the next year or several years?
I believe now, this is going to be maybe not popular, but I believe that this industry is going to actually get their act together. And I believe continuity, meaning my definition of continuity is you have a plan in place that's executable in the event something happens. I believe that is going to start becoming a lot more consistent with advisors and firms regarding their clients. It's been something that we've talked about for the last 10 years. And I think that as we move forward, I think that's something that we're going to see folks actually really get in line. And I would frankly love to see a mandate that requires that, particular, if you're at a wirehouse, the wirehouse says those are your clients, so that doesn't really apply. But if you're running an RIA and it's not owned by, a partnership where there's more than one in the event one dies, I think there should be a requirement that there's a buy sell, there's continuity plan in place. Because personal opinion, I think that if you're holding yourself out as a fiduciary and you don't have that plan in place, you're not really behaving like a fiduciary.
All right, you ready for trend or fad? It's our rapid fire segment.
Let's do it.
I'm going to mention a few different concepts and you can tell me whether you think it's a trend or fad. Podcasting, trend or fad?
Trend.
Wellness sabbatical, trend or fad? You ever heard of this before?
You know what? I have. Yeah, I feel like that I need about a 12-month wellness sabbatical after COVID. Trend or fad? It's got to be a fad.
I wonder. It's actually kind of a working sabbatical from what I've read, where you go off for 21 days or maybe longer, and you carve out a few hours of the day to work, but then you're in some beautiful place and you're doing
Is it almost like a recharging retreat or something? Because
it seems that way.
Yeah. Look, I think it's interesting. I think as compression goes on in terms of the demographic of advisors in our industry, right? I feel like we're kind of doing this for our world. As we get more younger folks coming in, I think it starts to balance out sort of the aging advisors. So that's maybe a 50-50.
I like the sound of it. Video gaming, trend or fad?
I have kids. It is trending like nobody's business in my family. Now, I will tell you, I've got one or two games that I play. And so I think it's trending.
Well, this has been great, Ryan. Thank you very much for your time. What is the best way for people to find you and connect with you?
Thank you so much, Ed. This has been a great time and a great discussion. To find me, they can email me, Ryan, R-Y-A-N, at famatch.com. And they can find me on Twitter at Ryan Shanks.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Ryan. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Trends with Benefits.